How you guys doing? Thanks for coming. Just a couple of people that I don't know if we've agreed to terms with Alex Jason on a 2-year contract, and we've also agreed to a entry-level contract with Gaetan Haas, a Swiss player. We've got one sheet of his contract, but he needs to sign 2, so expect that to be done today or later tomorrow. So those are in additions to, obviously you're aware of Mike Smith and Marcus Granlund. I'm not sure who else so open for questions.
I know heading into free agency, looking for supplementary scoring was something that was high up on the priority list. Maybe just discuss that pursuit and where you think you are with that.
Well, I think, when I was announced 2 months ago, what I was hoping to accomplish over the summertime, still 2 months to go, obviously was to get another goaltender to go with Koskinen. Obviously Dave Tippett had Mike Smith in Dallas. I think they were together. Very, very competitive guy. He can handle a puck. He's a motivated athlete. We talked to him a couple of times this week, so we feel good about our tandem and goal. And then on the back end, we wanted to create more competition. We need to find more players that can get double-digit goals. Marcus Granlund is a player that I think the last 3 years had 19. I think he scored 8 in about 50-something games and had 12 goals last year. So we think his resume says that he should be able to score double-digit goals. And we've signed we signed Nygaard from Sweden. We've signed Gaetan Haas from Switzerland. I know Thomas Jurko. Obviously, we drafted him in Detroit. We're trying to create more competition at the bottom part of the roster. We're also trying to have the bottom part of the roster play with more pace. Obviously, signed Jujhar Khaira to a 2-year contract, and so we think that we've started that. Don't think that we're done, but that's part of where we're at.
All right, so just to follow up, you made the decision yesterday you did on Sekera to buy him out to create a space. You said you're not done, but in a perfect world with a lot of these deals seem to be shorter-term deals, and is that also part of sort of the mindset and the approach that you have? And then maybe just a thought on the opportunities that open up on defense with Sekera now out of the mix.
Well, the Sekera decision was tough. I don't know him, but certainly in talking to all the people around here that have worked with him on an everyday basis, they hold him in the highest regard. One of the things that, when I was in Detroit, I have great respect for pros and the guys that come, they're role models. And that certainly was what was laid out to me in Sekera, was that he was a role model. He's had a tough couple of years, the last 2 years. I think he's played 60 games in the last 2 years combined. Obviously, the injury bug has hit him big time. And I would say that, we needed to create some cap space and some opportunity to do some things. And I also think that we're trying to get some of the younger defensemen to have an opportunity heading into training camp. The guys that played in the young defensemen that played in Bakersfield. So that was ultimately all the reasoning around the buyout. Again, we have a little bit of cap space left. We'll see what So on the 1-year contract, certainly that was part of the philosophy is trying to be competitive. I think when I stood here two months ago, on the short term, we want to compete for the playoffs in 1920. On the longer term, we want to try to build. Certainly the building is going to be about some of the drafting and the developing and ultimately, the pushing players through the system onto your roster. There's some young players here that they're going to need some time, but I think they can be real important players to this team going forward. But in the short term, we need more competition. Want to get more pace to the bottom part of the roster. Obviously, in Mike Smith, we think we've got 2 goaltenders that we can create a competition Both are hard workers. Both are really competitive. We believe they're going to push one another to play real well and and allow us to have goaltending as a strength. Um, Now we'll see what, that's sort of where we're at today.
You're really kind of outlined your plan a month ago and didn't deviate. You said you weren't going to bring in anybody really on defense and looked at forward, bottom six, and goaltending. When you look at your defense now and what you have on the right side, and you look at guys maybe who aren't big puck movers, so do you look at like a Pearson or a Benning or even Jones to play on his offside to be able to be the puck movers on your right defense this year?
You know, I think that question you've asked, some of those are going to be answered in training camp. I think we got to get to training camp. We got to play preseason games. We got to play games. I think that's one of the reasons why, at pick 8 we took Broberg. The importance of defense in the National Hockey League today. So, you got Samorukov, you got Bouchard, you got Broberg, young defensemen. They're going to need some time. But we've got some defensemen in Bakersfield. Lagesson. Persson's coming over obviously from Sweden. You got Jones, Bear. Might have missed somebody, but they're players that they can compete for spots in training camp. So I think that ultimately, as I weighed whether we stood pat and didn't buy out Sekera, or we did, at the end of the day, we needed some cap space to try to create a little bit of opportunity to do something. But also the push of defensemen. I think that's one of the strengths of this organization. And the top 4 guys you're talking about, for the most part, top 4s, you got to do one of 2 things. You've either got to draft them and develop them, or you got to pay a ton of money to get them. And we don't have a ton of money to get them, and I think we do have top 4 defensemen, but I'm not sure that they're ready right now. But I believe they're pushing through the system.
And in Granlund, when you sign him, is the plan to have him as a center, even though he's played a lot of wing in Vancouver, and similar with Jujhar Khaira? Where do you see those two fitting in the lineup?
Well, he can play all 3 positions. We talked to him. I think he's most comfortable on the wing. He can play center. As we sit here today, obviously we need a third-line center. Gaetan Haas is a center. Jujhar can play center. Granlund can play center, but certainly we're on the lookout to see if we can find another guy between now and training camp that can play center. Jim, over there.
Jason.
Yes.
Circle back to him, or what was the reasoning there?
Circle back in what term?
Well, he waited a while.
I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. To his agent, Pat Morris. I'm not sure if it was about 2 weeks ago, and then talked to him, I think, early this week. And I think that, obviously, he had 22 goals. He's popular in the locker room. He's a right shot. We wanted to explore the market, and I think in the cap world, what you try to do is you try to get the most bang for your buck on every signing. Not everyone works out. We wanted to explore the market. I stayed in touch with Pat Morris. Pat and I had a sort of a joke today when we talked to Alex. I think this week, Pat Morris might have called me at 10 o'clock every night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And, Alex Jason was one of the people that we talked about. So I've been in touch with Alex's camp, with his agent, all week.
And one more, you don't have a top 6 for a winger for Nugent Hopkins to play with yet. Are you still looking for one of those?
Always looking, Jim, always looking, yeah.
Was Nyquist just too expensive, or what? Because you know him from Detroit.
I think, what, he had 5.5 cap number? It's a big number. I'm happy for Gus. I'm happy for Gus. I say that facetiously. It's obviously when you look at our team and you put down what's committed, it was a big number for us.
Ken, you mentioned you do have some cap room at your disposal. How close do you want to get to the cap before training camp? And do you envision now that it'll be a trade that you'd have to make to augment the lineup aside from, or rather than a free agent sign?
I think, I think when we get to training camp, I think you'd like to be at least, $1.5 million. You'd like to have a player for, you're not going to go any less than $1 million less, closer to the cap, because it's 925. I think ideally you'd love to be, $1.5 million to 2 below the cap, so that you've got at any point in time you can bring up a couple of players, 2 or 3 players, depending on what their cap number is, 700 to 900. Is that? Yes.
Yeah, that's the question. I think when when we build your lines on a notepad today,
Yep.
your top 6 still has maybe a couple of bottom 6 guys in it, maybe a couple guys, certainly a guy like Nygaard or somebody who has never played here. How, I don't want to ask if you're satisfied with it, but how much work does it need before it can get a passing grade in your top 6 by training camp?
Well, I won't give any grades to training camp until I watch the players on the ice, Mark. I wouldn't have a clue. I got to watch them play. Certainly, we'd like to add another player that has the potential to score 20 goals. We'll see if we can make that happen.
So can the agent for Brett Connolly mentioned that Edmonton was certainly in the mix there. Wayne Simmons might have made sense, especially given the term length of his deal. Is it a different challenge in Edmonton? Not that it's Edmonton, just that it's in the West versus guys that have spent a number of years playing in the Eastern Conference. Some guys like to stay out east. Does it limit the pool a bit, or?
I didn't find that at all. I think at the end of the day, it's everything. Your decisions are cap related today, and I think at the end of the day, all the names that you're going to mention up front, other than the guys that commanded, 8, 9, 10, $11 million salaries. For the most part, I talked to all of them or their agents for sure, and I think that it was. Again, I think it's cap related. I think it's about how much cap space you got. Those teams today that made a lot of noise had a ton of cap space, and it goes in cycles. And somewhere down the road, we're going to have a ton of cap space, and somebody else isn't going to have a ton of cap space. So right now, we don't have a ton of cap space. We're going to bring in play. You just heard the plan. Somewhere down the road, we're going to have a ton of cap space, and we're going to make noise. But certainly, when you've got the core of players here that this organization's got, it's very intriguing to players outside to play with those kind of players.
Ken, this is your first time in this fishbowl. All your years in hockey and everything like that. Can you contrast?
Detroit was a fishbowl too.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was, but in this particular one, can you contrast what this last 2 months have been like for you? And also, I mean, I have to tell you, to the extent this fan base is starving but their expectations were somewhere up there. Is there a sense of disappointment from that point of view in what you were able to deliver?
I try to make decisions with no emotion, and I would say to you, I try to live in a cocoon as much as I can. And you come, we were here every day from Sunday. I think we showed up here at 7:30 and went home at 7:30 and worked the phones, talked to people, had our lineup on the board, looked at our cap space, looked at our commitments. Looked at the other side of the board with our prospects to project when those players, would hit this side of the board. We did that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you wake up today. So to me, it's about the process. It's about every day going about the process, that eventually when you got to make a decision, you've made a decision based upon all the information at hand. And unless you sit in that room and you're in the room of the 31 organizations, you don't have all that information. I've been on the phone with the agents. I've talked to every general manager in the National Hockey League. We've looked at the board, we've looked at everything, and you go and you eventually make a decision based upon all that information. Lots of people don't have all that information, the information that I've got at hand. So I don't have any disappointment whatsoever. We made the decisions based upon all the information at hand.
Ken, to paraphrase, you kind of said that to be in the free agent game, you have to be willing or comfortable to overpay, or else you're not going to be in the game. And so today, did you feel that the players that commanded the money they did, it was a little too out of your out of your price range, comfort range to ultimately go those 4 years or multiple large contracts for players today?
Did I feel?
The market, I guess, too high.
No, I don't think so. No, I think again, I was just saying to Terry, based upon all the information, I made the decision. Whatever decision I made or didn't make was based upon a lot of research, a lot of talk, a lot of planning, looking forward, and trying to determine where we are today and where we want to get to. So I've been a manager. I've been a manager for 22 years. I know when it's time to pay and when it's time not to pay. But I also know that every decision, we talked about this, not every decision works out, but you gotta go through a process eventually to make your decisions. And on the short, you're hearing the same things over again because on the short term, we're trying to compete for a playoff spot in 1920, but ultimately, I'm trying to oversee and build this team into being a really good elite team in the Western Conference. And we made decisions today based upon those plans.
And you signed Kara to a 2-year contract.
Yep.
See, last year he didn't do very well. You do that because he's your own player and you haven't seen much of him and you're hoping that he breaks through. 3 goals last year.
Yeah, we had 11 the year before. You need dimensions, Jim. Everybody's not the same size and the same skill set. He's a big guy that brings a different dimension to our hockey club. He can play in the center. He can play left wing. He's a big guy. Again, I lived in Detroit. I'm certainly counting on, or not listening to the information of the people that are here on an everyday basis. Again, he had 11 goals 2 years ago. He had a tough year last year, 3 goals. So, when you look in the guide and record book at lots of players, in some years they don't have very good years statistically. So we're expecting him to bounce back and be closer to the player he was 2 years ago.
Where are you on Mr. Pugliarvi, who doesn't want to play here?
Where am I in Jesse? I've talked to a lot of teams. Not sure where I'm at, but talked to a lot of teams about a lot of different ideas about Jesse. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. We'll see.
Just to follow up on that, Ken, are you to play the patient game with that? We've seen a lot of young guys, at different times, or even older players, get frustrated for whatever reason. Is patience the key here? You don't feel like you're in a position where you have to be rushed into anything?
Well, I think when I make a decision, it's got to be in the best interest of the team, and until there's something that I think makes really good sense to our team, I won't pull the trigger. So nothing has. Certainly, he's expressed frustration and disappointment at the way things have gone in his Oiler career. Obviously you guys talked to I think Mark talked to his agent 10 days ago or something and he doesn't, I don't think he's planning on playing for the Edmonton Oilers, but I've had players tell me that in Detroit, and they did play for Detroit. So, and in some cases they've told me that, and they didn't play, and I ended up trading him. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is, if I do trade him, it's got to be a deal that I feel good about, that I think is in the best interest of this team. And if something like that isn't out there, then Jesse's going to have to make a decision. Good. Thanks.
Hey Marcus, congratulations and welcome to Edmonton informally. Just wanted to quickly get word from you on why Edmonton was the right choice for you.
Yeah, I think when I'm watching the roster, I think obviously there's great players, and I think it's a good spot for me to be kind of a depth guy and be able to play after McDavid and Draisaitl and be able to help the team win.
So you've played in Calgary and you've played in Vancouver, now you're playing in Edmonton, so you must know this division pretty well then.
Yeah, obviously last 5-6 years I've been playing there in Western Canada, so I like all those cities and all those battles and games. They're going to be great.
Marcus, Daniel Nugent-Bowman from The Athletic. I'm just curious about your potential to play on the penalty kill. Obviously, the Oilers have had trouble in that area the last few years. How do you think you might be able to help the team in that regard?
Yeah, I think on PK you got to be a smart player to play PK, and you have to read how the other power play is going to play. So I think that's one of my good parts of my game. So hopefully I'm able to help Oilers.
So are you a center or a winger?
Well, I can play both, so I think that's a good thing for me.
Did you play more wing last year? I think you played center when some of the centers got hurt, Sutter and other people, didn't you?
Yeah, I last four seasons I've been playing more wing, but yeah, last year when a couple of centers got hurt, so then I was playing center.
Now, before you talked about playing in Western Canada for a while, what's it like to play in a Canadian market, and how do you feel like you've kind of been accustomed to that and adjusted to that over your time?
Well, yeah, obviously every time when you play in Canada and when you're part of the Canadian team, it's like all the fans loves hockey, so I like it, and it's I think it's a good thing, and when people are watching you, yeah.
Were you surprised? I mean, we always ask this question, but were you surprised when Vancouver did not qualify you and you became an unrestricted free agent?
Well, I didn't really think about that at all when I heard it. Maybe I was a little bit surprised, but obviously all the salary cap and everything. So that's what business is, and now I have to move on.
Marcus, do you sense there's a real opportunity to kind of move up the lineup here in Edmonton and maybe play a top 6 role? And what would you have to do in your mind to put yourself in the best position to ultimately do that?
Well, obviously I have to put some numbers and play good hockey if I want to be a top 6, and we'll see what's going to happen and when the season starts.
Was Glenn Gulletson in Vancouver when you were there?
Sorry, who?
Was Glenn Gulletson in Vancouver coaching when you were playing there?
No.
Okay.
He wasn't. I don't think so.
And were there other teams that, we always ask this too, were there lots of other teams that wanted to sign you, or did you take the offer which seemed good to you playing in Edmonton because you already played in Calgary and Vancouver?
Yeah, there was a couple teams, but yeah, I feel like Edmonton, that's a good spot for me, and yeah, obviously I'm excited to play there.
So are you a better checker than your brother? Are you better defensively than your brother?
Obviously.
He makes more money though.
I don't care about that.
Marcus, what was the whole free agency process like for you? I know it happened kind of quickly here on July 1, but take us through some of the emotions that a player kind of goes through on July 1 and the days leading up to it.
Yeah, I didn't really really want to think about it. And obviously, time change here in Finland. I've been sleeping during the day, so like when the day is in Canada. So yeah, but yeah, everything happened quickly, and yeah, I'm just happy that I'm part of the Edmonton right now.
The Oilers in Calgary play some very spirited hockey games, and I understand that Milan Lucic has already reached out to you. Do you like that interaction with a player like Lucic and yourself in the crease?
No. No, not really, but it happens. I'm a competitive guy, so it's good. So, you know, the Battle of Alberta is real life. It's a lot of fun to be a part of, and obviously I'm switching teams now, but that's not going to stop me from being a competitive player. That's how I play, and looking forward to being in an Oil uniform and to experience that from a different perspective this year.
Mike, Mark Spector here. Your numbers last year were, your save percentage wasn't where it's been most of your career, but after January 1st, it went up quite a bit, and obviously you had a really good playoffs. Can you just describe to us, how you end up at, with the numbers you had, but you ended up having a real good finish to the year? What happened?
There's a few things that happened, to be honest, at the start of the season. I don't really want to get into that personally. I think there was some mental things that I didn't really have the start that I was looking for, and got behind the 8 ball with number-wise, and but decided mentally after the break that I was going to, give it everything I had in the second half, and just compete like I know I can, and really felt like I played some of my best hockey down the stretch into the playoffs, and got the confidence going and the mojo back, and still feel like I can be a big part of a team success.
Mike, it's Tim Campbell from NHL.com. Why are you and Dave Tippett so compatible?
Well, Tip was a big reason why kind of my career turned around in Arizona. Bringing me to Arizona and giving me a chance to, to be a number one guy and play a lot of games. And I have a lot of respect for the way he coaches, the way he treats people. His transparency is unlike a lot of coaches. He's very honest, and I think that's all you can ask as a player is you want to know where you stand. And Tip's that kind of coach. He has a very structured system, and that I really believe in, and I think he really gets the most out of his players. So I think he, obviously this is my third stint now with him. It's been well documented that I'm a big fan of Dave Tippett and the way he coaches, and excited that he, reached out and is giving me another opportunity here in Edmonton.
Mike, Jamie from the Oilers digital team, how attractive was it for you, just the situation in the crease with the Oilers, having the duo with Mikko Koskinen on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, from what's been relayed to me, it's just if you play well, you're going to play, and I think that, like I said, that's all you can ask for as a player, and it's up to you to go in there and to play well and make them not want to take you out. And I think Mikko's a real big guy that has a lot of upside, and I'm going to do everything I can to help him out too. I owe that to him. I owe that to players that I play with in the league, that I'm a veteran guy now and understand my role, but still feel like I can bring a lot to the table, and I'm going to do everything I can this year to get Oil Country back in the playoffs.
Mike, Daniel Nugent-Bowman from The Athletic. Aside from having Dave Tippett behind the bench, what was ultimately appealing about playing in Edmonton and signing with the Oilers?
Connor McDavid. To get a chance to play with one of the best players in the world, and Edmonton's a good team. They're a good team. They were competitive every time we played them last year. I think they probably underachieved last year if you talk to players on their team, and I think Tip will be, a real good solution to getting this team back on track, and be real competitive every single night. They might not be the most skilled out through their whole lineup, but they have game changers that can, in the blink of an eye, can change the game. So I think that's important, obviously, and the depth of the team is a lot better than people give it credit for. So, like I said, I'm going to come in there and hopefully stabilize the back end, and my puck handling, I feel, is a big attribute to the defense core, and like looking forward to this new chapter.
Can you hit McDavid at the far blue line?
I'm going to do my best.
Is it, Mike, Jim Matheson from Post Media, is there some comfort in when you change teams, you only have to drive about 3 hours down the road? It's not like you have to pack your whole family up and travel across the country. You only have to go to Edmonton.
Yeah, with 4 kids, it makes it a little bit more easy, right? But, you know, I really do like Alberta. I think I really enjoyed my time in Calgary. And, you know, the Battle of Alberta is the real deal. So I think, you know, changing teams will probably be a little bit weird at first, but it always is. I've been through that before. You know, but I'm excited about this new chapter. My family's real excited, and I have a lot of friends that are Edmonton Oilers fans, and they were reaching out to me already. So I'm sure I'll really enjoy Edmonton, and like you said, not too difficult to move. So that obviously helps out too.
Good. Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot, Smitty.
Thank you.